Together we'll explore how we can each play a more sustainable role in our communities as parents, teachers, operational leaders and students. We'll consider how we use this pivotal time as an opportunity to educate, connect and imagine a more sustainable future for our children and grandchildren.
From a sustainability point of view, to me, energy is just a simple first step. Like, learn what's consuming, learn how to consume less.
I would totally agree with you, Rob. I think it's paramount that we measure, first of all, what we're consuming, because we can't really address how to reduce without really knowing how we are doing and how we compare to others.
And I think there's a great opportunity coming out of the COVID-19 situation for us to think a bit differently about some of the measures that we've put in place. We know that kids really enjoy gamification and having some targets to work towards. So that's something that we're very interested in, as a behavioural science.
What would be the best way for parents to go about approaching their school to try and help improve with sustainable practice?
At the moment, we have this younger generation who have so many great ideas, and they are very committed to do the right thing when it comes, for example, to recycling at home. And a lot of our school students, they learn a lot when we do run workshops. So I think it's the other way around, is how the kids can teach their parents to do the right thing when it comes to recycling, for example.
What is some advice or tips that you can offer on putting a positive spin on things while keeping kids and schools engaged?
It's really just about empowering them to say that they've got a role to play, despite the fact that many studies would say that Australia's contribution to overall carbon emissions around the world is not that significant. It requires everyone to do their job. And, we think that's really, really empowering and motivating for the children.
There's also some really positive news stories around the environment at the moment, and looking at how the environment is responding to the current climate, the current COVID climate.
There is currently a sort of stigmatism around sustainability in that it has become like trendy. And as a result, people can just pass caring for our earth as a trend and think it's not all that important. How would you advise combating this to engage and properly educate peers?
Well, I think the reality speaks for itself. I mean, the last 6 months, we've got a 7-year-old daughter, and she's probably seen more catastrophes in the last 6 months than I did in a lifetime. I think the climate is beginning to change quite dramatically. It's not a nice to have, it's not trendy. It is, we have an opportunity. We've shown with COVID, we can change society literally in 4 weeks. And I think the emergency climate change it maybe was a dummy run, the COVID one, for what we need to do for climate change, how we need to adapt today and tomorrow, not in 10 years, not in 15 years. We've got to do it now. And I think the message to all the people that I really believe, look, we have a challenge out there, is to not give up and collaborate, work together and come together in forums like this one to share ideas and see, look, this has worked, this hasn't worked. How do we get that consensus out to the general public who sometimes think climate change is off the radar a little bit, quite frankly. COVID's the big number one, obviously, but climate change has not gone away in the time that we've been dealing with COVID. So I think it is just keep plugging away, the ones that are passionate about it, and drive the change via direct action and collaboration.
We kind of forget that in Australia, for example, there are more schools in Australia than there are service stations. There's 9,600 odd schools in Australia. And we keep looking at them as a single school. But if you combine them all together, they make one of the biggest emitters of CO2 in this country. So somehow we have to look at the schools as a whole group and go, the kids have the power in their hands to create change for sustainability and for the climate by just learning in their own schools and learning about waste and learning about energy and learning about water consumption and looking at the political aspects of those things as well for the higher level kids.
I think this is just the way of to show them what small changes and get the positivity out of that. So it's really about to learn at the moment how to be resilient.
It can be overwhelming starting the sustainability journey. What do you recommend as a first step for teachers or student clubs based at school? Where to start?
I think the first place to start is just discussing and talking about different ideas. And I mean, it's very interesting when kids, like, as we keep repeating, you know, they are often the ones teaching their parents. And if they go off and find interesting news stories and come together and share them, and you hear the child's take or the student's take on that issue, that's a really great way to get inspired and to learn new things and just to start the conversation, really.
I think part of it is actually recognising that every single contribution that's made matters. And I think when we adopt that mindset and we help our kids to adopt that mindset, it just becomes incredibly motivating for everyone to make a contribution. We're very big believers in the multiplication or magnification effect. If we can, through the school system, create hundreds of thousands of these next generation leaders, we know 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the track, that's all going to cascade into massive impact in the world we live in.
Couldn't agree with you more, David. Fantastic message. Thank you. Stephanie, I have a question here for you from our attendees. They say, do you think this generation, the climate movement generation, will be the one leading us to a sustainable future?
I hope so. Well, we are all in this together. Definitely the younger generation has a big role to play because they are the ones who really understand it and can vision the future based on what they learn at school through their program.
Absolutely. I mean, we've had a chance and we've not done that well. And I think they're very much primed to take over. I mean, I said we have a 7-year-old. She's almost more sustainable than I am, and it's almost impossible at this stage. So that is the generation. She'll pull me up when I'm doing something slightly wrong, and I'm going, okay, yes, I'm guilty. So I have total and utter confidence in that generation, and I think we really have to harness that energy.
Even just the COVID situation has forced us to think about whether the knowledge and insights that we've had around some aspects of sustainability are actually appropriate for what we know today. So I really want to strongly emphasise whatever we do in this space has to embrace continuous learning. The fact that it is often the kids that are finding these amazing innovations or best practices and having the mechanisms to share and make sure that the community knowledge pool is embraced rather than it all sitting in a central source.
What's one key takeaway that you'd like us to remember from our 2020 Sustainability Symposium? Tess, can you start us off with that one?
Sure. I would say collaboration is the key message for sure. I think we can't work in silos. Like, we all have such interesting perspectives on sustainability in teaching, and it's so important that we share our lessons, that we collaborate, that we don't sort of do our bit and keep it to ourselves, especially touching on the resources. I think it's so important that teachers, they develop some really interesting curriculum resources around sustainability, and it's so important that there's platforms where they can share those resources and collaborate.
I knew you would ask me, and I had exactly the same point.
Oh dear.
It's collaboration.
I agree, it is.
Sharing knowledge. It's because we know certain things around supply chains. Rob and David and Tess have other skills, and it's collaboration. Schools collaborate, sustainability experts collaborate, everyone collaborate. Because we do have quite a big challenge. We've got vested interests. I think Rob was telling us before, we have to fight against established thinking.
It just depends on how fast, this thing opens back up and we go back to our old behaviour. So I think it's just encouraging schools to take the lessons they've learnt through this epidemic and carry some of those things forward and develop them into new programs and new platforms and new ideas, and not just go back to the old way of being.